faces and some unfamiliar ones. One of the problems of having the same students in multiple classes, they cannot repeat jokes. So before we start, let me just mention quickly a couple of things. So this is an informal talk, as you can see. I have a notepad, but it's mainly to show. So please stop me if you have any questions. So there is no reason to sort of let me finish whatever I'm talking about. Just raise your hand and stop me. That's the first thing. Secondly, of course, it's an hour talk, and there's no way, as you might imagine, there's no way I can make justice to the entire course. So we'll sort of keep it open-ended. We'll go as much as we can, and give you sort of, at the end, I'll give you a couple of extensions on where the game theory is going nowadays. And finally, I'm not going to assume that you guys know too much game theory. I'm not quite sure how much game theory you know. If you're an expert in game theory, this is probably not the talk for you. If you have no idea what game theory is, that's good enough. If you have seen Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind, that's about more than I would expect. Okay, so these are the three quick topics. So let me just give you a rough outline of what we're going to do. We'll talk about a bit about history of game theory. So, history of the subject. Then we'll touch on sequential games. Of perfect information. We'll quickly touch on simultaneous games. And then in the end, maybe we'll talk about a few extensions of the ideas. So that's another roadmap. So we're going to quickly give you a perspective of how this subject came about, and then we'll talk about these different things. Throughout, I'll try to give you applications, hopefully from economics, from politics, from other social sciences, from evolutionary biology, for example. Okay, so, I mean, again, I'm no historian by any means, but as far as I know, one of the first logical approaches to analyzing games was done in 1944 by these two guys. There's this famous book called Theory of Games and Economic Behavior. By these two guys, von Neumann and Morgenstern. And this was in 1944. So one of the books that everybody talks about, this is very similar to the book A Brief History of Time, in the sense that everybody talks about it but nobody ever reads it, and this is one of those books. Yes? So I don't know how much of von Neumann you know. He was this incredibly bright mathematician who was in the early 1920s, 1930s. He was a professor at Princeton. One of the most arrogant individuals apparently that ever lived. He was once called the most brilliant person in Princeton, which is, seems okay, but at that point of time Einstein was in Princeton, so I guess he was really bright guy. So his idea, what he was trying to do in this book, is trying to find out a rational way of playing games. So if you are a super rational individual who can calculate millions of steps ahead, how would two super rational individuals play a typical game? And his primary interest was poker. So he wanted to see whether there's a sort of a rational way of playing poker. He wanted to find out. So the idea was what is the rational way of playing poker? So right away, von Neumann, while he was trying to find out this theory, he ran into two big problems. So the first problem, of course, is that the game of poker is really complicated. So there are thousands of possible options, and each option has these different distributions and all that stuff. So computationally, it was not as easy as it seemed in the beginning. So he could come up with sort of existence results. There exists a good strategy, but exactly what strategy it is was hard to determine because of the complexity of the game. So that was the first problem he ran into. The second problem is sort of much more philosophical problem, is that, I don't know how many of you guys play poker. I don't play poker, but for people who don't play poker, the idea is if there's a possibility that you can bluff if you have a good hand, if you have a bad hand, or try to play it cool if you have a good hand. So there are possibilities of trying to deceive your opponent. So, but the problem is if you think about what strategy you should use, life becomes very complicated. So for example, if I think my opponent is a careful guy, then I might bluff, right? So what I'm going to do, whether I'm going to bluff or fold, depends on what I think he thinks about me, right? But what he thinks about me depends on what he thinks I will do. So what I should do depends on what I think he thinks, what I think, what he thinks, and what I think he thinks, and then life becomes completely messy, and your head starts hurting, right? So if I want to do something, I have to. If I bluff, it is the best strategy to challenge me if I have a bad hand, right? But if he challenges, it's probably not the best strategy to bluff. You see what I'm saying? So if I will bluff if I think he thinks I have a bad hand. But I would not bluff if he thinks that I think that he thinks that I have a bad hand, and so on and so on. So this sort of was this incredible problem that one had to deal with. So that was sort of more philosophical problem. So there are computational problems of in game theory as well as philosophical problems. So let me sort of introduce one of the examples that von Neumann thought of, and we'll come back to this example at the end of the lecture and see what we can do, how we can solve this game. So here's a simple example. So this is not exactly a game of poker. So it's an extremely unfair, simplistic version of poker. So let's say there are two players 1 and 2. And player 1, and both of them look at their hands, and then they have two. Player 1 starts the game, and he has two strategies. He can either check, which means right away. So at first, let me just rephrase the rules. At the beginning, both players, there are two players, both players put down $1 on the table. Okay, that's the ante. So I put down $1, my opponent puts down $1. Okay. After we put down $1, then we look at our hands. So now I start, let's say. I have two options. Either I can check right away, which means that I look at my hand and I say, let's have a showdown. Whoever has a better hand wins that $1. Is that okay? So the game ends here if I check. So it's a showdown here, okay? So it's incredibly unfair to player 2, as you can see. Because player 2 has no option of doing anything. I can just stop the game right away and look at my hand. Is that okay? So this is not quite poker. Or I can bet. So I initially start off with an ante of $1, and if I bet, let's say I bet $1,000. So I've got two possible bets, either $1 or $1,000 in the second round. Is that okay? So I bet, now player 2 gets to move, and player 2 has two options, either to fold, that means he says, sorry, it's not worth my time, so he loses his buck. Is that okay? The ante that he put up. Or he can check, which means that he's going to put down $1,000, and then whoever has a better hand wins. Is that clear? So the game would end here. Are you guys all with me so far? Yes? So this is sort of a one-shot poker, which is a very, very simplified version of what we actually play, right? So the question is, if two rational players are playing this game, as in rational as in you are really smart, you can compute all the probabilities, you know what Bayes' rule is and all that stuff. So if two rational players are playing this game, then what would be the strategy? How should this game be played by two rational players? That's the question. Is that okay? So if you could answer this question, then you can extend the idea to more realistic things like actual poker and so on. So just keep this game at the back of our minds, and we'll come back at the end and we'll try to solve this game. But this is the idea. So a lot of other games. So von Neumann came up with this theory, which is called the min-max theory of playing these kinds of games. But what he was doing is he was only concentrating on what we call zero-sum games. So most games that we actually think of in life, the games that are actually played on the field, etc., are what we call zero-sum games. In other words, if I am winning, suppose two of us are playing this game, if I am winning, automatically it means that you are losing. Right? If I score a goal, automatically your team is behind. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Yes. So that's what is called a zero-sum game, right? So we are exact opponents of one another, right? So my happiness is equal to your sadness. So if you think of the game of tic-tac-toe, for example, which is the most stupid game of all, that game is also a zero-sum game, right? Where if I win, if I have one of those things in one line, then I win, you lose, yes. Poker is also a zero-sum game. So if I win, you lose, because that's actual money gets transferred, right? But then people realize that not all this idea of games can be extended to what is called non-zero-sum games. And that idea was by Schelling. So he wrote this famous book called The Strategy of Conflict. Excellent book to read. This was in the late 50s, early 60s. So he wrote this book where he extended the idea of von Neumann's zero-sum games to non-zero-sum games. So for people who like mathematical notations, let's sort of try to give you an idea of what this means. So the subject of economics, for example, or any other social sciences, we assume that we all have internally a happiness function, right? And we're trying to maximize that happiness function, whatever that is. So let's say we have two people, I and J, in a society. Economics assumes we are both trying to maximize. So I have a utility function ui, whatever that is. You have a utility function uj, whatever that is. And I'm trying to maximize my utility function by choosing the right action that I have in my control. Right? Is that okay? You are doing the same thing. But AI and AJs are the possible actions we can take. Yes? Subject to some constraints, of course. That is what is called decision theory, right? Where my action, I choose my action independently, you choose your action independently, and we both maximize our happiness. Yes? What game theory says is that my happiness not only depends on what I do, but also on what you do, right? That's the difference. Is that okay? So I can only control this part, right? By choosing the right action. And you are controlling this part. But I'm trying to maximize my happiness by choosing the right AI. Is that okay? But I don't have AJ under my control. I can influence AJ by choosing the right AI. Is that clear? So that's what game theory is. Yes? So that's fundamental. This is what decision theory is. This is what game theory is. What von Neumann was doing, he was saying that UI of AI, AJ, so I choose action AI, you choose action AJ. Your happiness is exactly negative of my happiness. Is that okay? Suppose you get some happiness, if I choose AI, you choose AJ, I get 75 units of happiness, whatever that is. Is that okay? What von Neumann was doing was assuming that if I'm happy by 75 units, you must be sad by 75 units. Is that clear? That's the typical game. What Schelling said is that we don't have to worry at all. We just look at general functions like these. So it need not be that UI is negative uj. It could be any, could take any form. Is that okay? So the von Neumann's zero-sum game will be a special case of Schelling's games. Is that okay? So it's only 40 units. Okay. So that was the sort of mathematical idea. So where did this come from? So there's a historical reason why Schelling was trying to introduce. So when we think of games, we should not always think of games as two people trying to fight each other. There are also possibilities of cooperation. I'll give you some examples. So the idea came from the Cold War. During the 60s, 50s and 60s, the US and the Soviet Union were absolutely bitter enemies of one another. So they were trying to devise military strategies of trying to see which country, both of them were essentially playing a game of world dominance. And they were both trying to choose the right military strategy. So it seemed like it was a zero-sum game, right? If Americans are better off, then the Russians are worse off, and so on. But it's partly a, so that this sort of went with the arms race, people started accumulating nuclear weapons and so on. But if you think about this game, it's not quite a zero-sum game, right? It's not that we don't want to destroy each other completely. We want to have world dominance subject to the fact that we're all living. Is that okay? So if you decide to, completely wipe me out and I decide to completely wipe you out, it's bad for both countries. Is that clear? So there's some level of cooperation also required. Think about, so that's one example. The arms race is an example of where this sort of theory can be used. Think about contracts. So the unions and the management, they talk to each other. When I got this job, I took this job in the University of Waterloo. There was this negotiation between the guy who's offering me the job and me. So the way it goes usually is the Waterloo offers you a contract saying I'm going to give you X amount of dollars per year, and then look at that contract and say this is an insult. I cannot deal with X amount of dollars. I need Y amount of dollars. And then the Waterloo people would come back and say, what are you talking about? You are bankrupt, and so on and so on. And then they will settle on a price, right, which is acceptable to both parties. That's how contract theory works, right? If you're bargaining with for example, if you're bargaining with your brother or sister for a piece of cake, you want to split the cake up and say, okay, I'm going to keep 80% of the cake, you take 20%. Then your brother says, no, why don't we split it 60-40, and so on and so on. Then you negotiate and finally reach a contract. Of course, it's true that the more cake you get, the less cake your brother gets, right? In that sense, it's zero sum. However, the more and more you haggle, the more and more you'll be hungry. So you want to try to get to an agreement as early as possible. That's the cooperative part. Is that clear? Yeah. So there is, in a lot of situations, we have partly zero sum, but partly we need cooperation. Let's think of other examples that we can apply game theory to. Auctions, for example. So if you think of auctions is a perfect example of exactly what I was talking about, right? So think about it. So let's say a painting is getting auctioned. So my happiness, of course, is whether or not I get the painting minus the amount of money I paid for it, right? Let's say that's my happiness. So my strategy is to bid for a painting, right? But my happiness does not just depend on my bid, but also what you guys are bidding for the painting, right? So in that sense, it's a game. So my happiness depends on not only my bid, but also on your bid, right? So there are various kinds of auctions that we see. I don't know whether you guys heard of different kinds of auctions. So there's a famous auction called the English auction, where, let's say, I'm setting up this piece of chalk. Yes? And so what the English auction is, people start bidding. So somebody says 10 cents, somebody says 15 cents, and so on and so on. Then eventually somebody says it, gives a bid, and nobody else overtakes it, and that guy gets his chalk. Yes, that's how the English auction works. The Dutch auction works in the exact opposite way, where the auctioneer shouts off a price of the chalk. So let's say I'm the auctioneer, I'll say $100 for this piece of chalk. And then there's silence. Then I say $95. Then there's silence, and so on, and go on reducing the price. Still somebody raises their hand and immediately sell my chalk to that person. That's what a Dutch auction is. So in English auction, the prices go up, right? And the Dutch auction, the prices go down. Is that okay? So in these different kinds of auctions, what should be a strategy? That's the question. That's the kind of question we'll try to answer today. Yes. Then there's something called a second price auction. We have a second price auction, where, so again, let's say we all write down our bids on a piece of paper. Let's say we're selling a painting or something. We all write down our bids on a piece of paper, submit it to the auctioneer. The auctioneer looks at those bids, gives the painting to the highest bidder, but the highest bidder only has to pay the second highest bid. Is that clear? So let's say I bid $100, you bid $90. Then I win the painting, but I only have to pay $90. Is that clear? That's what it's called a second price auction. Then there's something called an all-pay auction, where we bid, and so again, I said I bid $100, you bid $90, so I win the painting. I pay $100. It's the first price auction, but you also have to pay your last bid, even though you get nothing. Is that clear? That is what's called an all-pay auction. Are you guys all with me? So there are different rules for different auctions. So the question is, what kind of strategy should you use? Have you guys ever seen an all-pay auction? I have seen all-pay auctions in my country. Let me give you an example of what an all-pay auction is. So let's say I'm a politician. So what happens in countries, what used to happen in countries like mine, things are getting better, is that most politicians were corrupt, right? So the way, so let's say I'm Coke and you're Pepsi, so what we both do is we both try to open a plant in this guy's neighborhood. So we both bribe the member of parliament. So I give some money without knowing how much Pepsi has given. Pepsi will give some money without knowing how much I've given to the MP. So one of us gets the contract, but the other guy has to pay the bribe. Right? So that's like an all-pay auction. So they're both paying. The highest bidder, the highest briber wins, but the second highest briber is losing money. That's the idea. So that's what an all-pay auction is. So the question is, what kind of strategy should we do? Think of other examples, like tax evasion, for example, or littering. So it's not quite a game. So don't kill tax evasion as a game. But the idea is, so if you're a rational economic agent, every time April 30th comes up, you're thinking of whether or not to file taxes. So the question is whether it should file or whether it shouldn't file. The answer is that if you think that the rewards, if you don't pay your taxes, then you'll make a bunch of money, right, for this year. But there's a possibility that you'll get audited and your life will be miserable for the next 5 years, right? That's a trade-off. Is that okay? So if there is absolutely nobody auditing, if the government announces a policy that this year there will be no auditing, then it will be incredibly stupid of us to pay taxes, right? So the question, the way tax evasion problems work in game theory, for example. So let's say in my country, in a society that I live in, government has limited resources, right? And in the limited resources, government only can audit one person. Is that okay? It's a fictitious country, but government only has money to audit one guy. So I'm thinking whether to pay taxes or not. So the question is, if everybody else around me is paying taxes, right? Then if I don't pay taxes, then what happens? I'm the only guy that hasn't paid taxes, so I'll be audited with probability 1. You see what I'm saying? Is that clear? So in a society where everybody else is paying taxes, it's in my incentive, even though I'm not a government lover, I'll still pay taxes. Is that clear? In a society where nobody is paying taxes, and there are societies like those, then if I don't pay taxes, then I can hide in that crowd. You see. So the probability of me getting audited is 1 out of n, but n is the number of people not paying taxes, right? And if n is really large, I shouldn't pay taxes. I should just take that chance. Same thing with littering, right? So if I'm throwing garbage, if I eat my hot dog and dump my trash right on the street, of course, what do I gain? I gain the happiness by not walking up to the trash can. Yes. But what do I lose? The loss is the shame that everybody's going to stare at me and say, "What an idiot this guy is," right? But if everybody around me is an idiot, right? If everybody else is throwing trash on the street, yes, then I can hide in that crowd. You guys see what I'm saying here? Yes. So these sort of problems are sort of dealt with game theory. What are the equilibrium in school? Okay. There's this famous application of game theory in politics, where I'm sure you've heard of this, called the Hotelling's ice cream vendor problem. So let me just quickly give you an idea of what that is. So let's say here's a beach of length 1. So starts here, ends here. And you can think of every point on this beach, there's a human being. So it's an extremely crowded beach where we are sort of lying next to one another. And every point represents a human being. Is that okay? And there are 2 ice cream shops that are planning to open up an ice cream shop. So the ice cream shops are identical in quality, there's no difference. So let's say I'm ice cream shop A, you're ice cream shop B. So I set up my shop here, you set up your shop here. Then another assumption is that the beach people are lazy. They only will go to the nearest ice cream shop. So all of these guys that are lying on this beach would go to ice cream vendor A, right? Because that's closer to ice cream vendor B. Is that okay? All of these guys will go to ice cream vendor B. And if you divide this half and half, these guys will go to A, these guys will go to B. Is that clear? Yeah. So the question is, so suppose I have to set up my ice cream shop without knowing where you're going to set up your ice cream shop. And you have to set up your ice cream shop without knowing where I'm going to set up my ice cream shop. Where should we locate our shops? That's the question. So first of all, before we do that, let's just make sure this is a game, right? So my profits, how much money I'm going to make, not only depends on where I set up my shop, but where you set up your shop, right? So that's the game in that sense. Are you getting that clear? So the question is, for example, if this is the setup, suppose I set up myself here and you have set up yourself here, is this stable? Am I doing the best given what you are doing? No. Why? Because if I just take out my shop and go right next to you, then I'll get the entire market, right? Where I'm just getting this much of the market. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? So if I just uproot my shop and just move right to the left of you, then I'll get the entire market. So this is not stable. So I'll regret where I am, right? Given where you are. Is that clear? And you're going to regret where you are given where I am also. Is that clear? So what's a stable situation here? So one stable situation is that both of us are in the middle. You are here, I am here, right? So in that case, I get half the customers and you get half the customers. Is that okay? Can you do any, if I am here, can you do any better by moving? The answer is no, right? Because if you move, then suppose you decide to move here, then you're going to get all of these guys, for sure. But you only get half of these guys, right? Which is less than half. Is that okay? So both ice cream vendors punching themselves in the middle is an equilibrium in this market, right? Is that clear? What's this going to do with politics? So instead of thinking of ice cream, think of these as political views, right? So this guy is extreme left wing, Stalin or something, and this guy is extreme right wing, Milton Friedman or somebody, yes. And we're all and every point on this beach represents a political view of an individual. Is that okay? And I think of these ice cream vendors as political parties. So I'm a political candidate, you're a political candidate. We don't really have we are typical politicians. We don't really have our own views. We only get the maximum number of votes. That's all we care about, right? So what I'm saying is this is my policy, and what you are saying is this is my policy. Who are going to vote for me? People who are closer to me in policy than you. Is that okay? And people are going to vote for you. So it's exactly the ice cream vendor problem. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes. And what it says is that there's a natural tendency of unscrupulous politicians to come towards the center. What the equilibrium thing says. Is that clear? So there's always a tendency of politicians to come towards the center if they don't have any policies of their own. Is the idea clear? So that's what this is about. Anyway, so that was a long introduction. What's the introduction about this? So let's look at a couple of examples. Let's start with the typical games that we see, the sequential games. Of perfect information. So there are thousands of games that I want to think of. So let me just tell you what this means. I don't know how to write the formal definition. But a sequential game means that people move in steps. So first I move, then you move, then I move, and so on. So moves are in sequence. And I can observe the entire history of the game before I move. Is that okay? So there's nothing hidden. Is that clear? I can see your move, then you can see my move, then I can see your move, and so on. And eventually the game goes. So it's also a finite sequential game. The game goes on, does not go on forever. So for example, the game of tic-tac-toe is a sequential game of perfect information, right? So I move, then you move, and so on and so on. Yes. The game of NIM. The game of NIM. It's a very simple game. It's a good bar game to play. So let's say these are matchsticks. So there's 2 matchsticks here, 4 matchsticks here, 6 matchsticks here. And the rule is that you can pick up as many matchsticks as you want, but only from one of these blocks. So for example, you go first, so you can only pick up 1 from here, or both from here, or 1 from here, or 2 from here, whatever. You cannot pick up 1 from here and 1 from here. That's not allowed. Is that okay? So you can pick up as many matchsticks as you want, but only from one block. Then I go and I do the same thing. Then you go, then I go, and so on. Whoever picks up the last matchstick wins. That's the game of NIM. Is that clear what the game of NIM is? The game of anti-NIM, on the other hand, is the same game, but whoever has to pick up the last matchstick would lose. Is that okay? Game of anti-tic-tac-toe, for example, is whoever has their X's and O's in a sequence act loses. There are anti-tic-tac-toe competitions. The game of anti-chess is whoever gets checkmated first wins. Yes? So there are different versions. So every game has its anti-version. So this is the anti-NIM. So let's quickly play anyway, a quick round of anti-NIM. Anybody? So, yes, yeah. You want to go first? I go first.
Okay.
Who goes first? I.
Go ahead.
I.
So you can pick up more than one?
Yeah, remember, whoever picks up the last one loses. Yes, that's it.
Alright, I'll pick up the 4 in the middle.
The 4 in the middle. I pick up these 3.
Dude, you already lost.
Oh!
Alright, one more time. Who goes? You go first, I go.
I'll go.
Yep.
I'll just take one out of the
I take one.
Okay, I'll take that one.
This one?
Yeah.
I take this one.
Play this game a lot. I'll take 1 out of the 4.
1. I take 1.
I'll take 2 from the 4.
2. I take all 3, yes. Anyway, so this is what the game of anti-NIM is. Is that okay? So let's try, let me give you one more example. I will tell you how to solve this game in 1 second. So it's a good way to make money of your friends also. So let's look at the other example is, so let me give you one more example. The example of pirates. I don't know whether you call this pirate. So think about, let's say there are 5 pirates and there are 50 gold coins. Yes. So they want to negotiate how to divide these 50 gold coins among these 5 pirates. And here's how the negotiation is going to work. The oldest pirate, let's say I'm the oldest pirate, I start the negotiation and I say, okay, I'm going to keep this, you have this, you have this, you have this. I select the distribution. Is that okay? And then it goes to a vote. If half of us agree to my suggestion, then we split the coins in that order and we all go home. If more than half disagree, then I'm thrown off the boat and the second oldest pirate takes over. Is that okay? Is it a game changer? So I suggest a split, goes to a vote, democracy, half votes for me, then we split the coins in the way I suggested. If more than half says no, then I get kicked out. Let's say the kicked out payoff is 0 or something. And then the second oldest pirate gets in, and now I get no shot at any of these gold coins. Is that okay? And then the second oldest pirate, again the same thing, he proposes something. If he gets kicked out, then the third oldest pirate takes over. So the question is, suppose there are 50 gold coins, and you have 5 pirates, and you are the oldest pirate, what would you suggest? Yes? 48? Yeah, hang on. He's already took my punchline away, but we'll talk about why it's 48 in 1 second. Is that clear? So that we'll talk about that. So let's go back. So how do we solve this sequential game in general? Right. The English auction, for example, is a sequential game, right? The poker is not quite perfect information, it's also sequential. So the way we solve it is very simple, is what we call backward induction. So let's take the game of NIM, for example, the game that we just played. How are we going to win this game? So I have to go and think about what is happening at the end of the game. That's my objective, right? If I know what to do at the end, then I know what to do at the previous step. And so I'll tell you what I mean by this. So when I was playing the game with him, I was trying to think of these following scenarios. Let's say we are in a situation where it's 2-2. There are 2 matchsticks left in both blocks. And it's your turn to move. Can you ever win from this position? So if you pick up 1, then I'll pick up these 2. Then you'll be stuck. If you pick up both of these, then I'll pick up 1 and you'll be stuck, right? So from 2-2, you can never win. Is that clear? How about from 1-1-1? You can never win, right? Because you're 1-1-1, I have to pick up this one. So 1-1-1, it's your move, right? You have to pick up this one, then I have to pick up this one. So you'll be stuck with this one, right? So from 1-1-1, you can never win. Is that clear? From 3-3, you can never win. Why? So let's say you pick up 1. So what is now? It's 2-3, right? What should I do? I should pick up 1 and make it 2, 2. I know from 2, 2 you can never win. Is the idea clear? So if there's 3, 3, I just pick up 1 and I just pick up the other. If you pick up 1, then I pick up this one and make it here, right? And you lose from here. If you pick up 2, what should I do? I should all pick up all 3 and you'll be stuck with this one. If you pick up all 3, I should pick up 2 and you'll be stuck with this one. Is that okay? So from 3, 3 you can never win. Are you guys all with me? From 4, 4 you can never win. Why? Because if you pick up 1, what is this? 4, 3. What should I do? I should pick up 1 to make it 3, 3. I know you all don't do it from 3, 3. Is that clear? From 1, 2, 3, you can never win. Why? If you pick up this one, what is this? 2, 3. Tell me what your move should be. Let's pick up 1 and make it 2, 2. Is that okay? If you pick up this one, so 1, 1. What should I do? I should pick up these 2 to make it 1, 1, 1. Is that okay? So what am I doing? So I'm going to the last step, and then thinking of what to do in the step before, then thinking of what to do in the step before, and so on. And that's what's called solving by backward induction. Is that clear? So if I give you any game, so any game can be drawn like this. So I can say, let's say player 1 moves, and player 1 has 2 strategies, A and B. And then player 2 has 2 strategies, C and D. Then player 2 has 2 strategies, E and F. And let's say the game ends here, 0, 1, 1, 3, 2, 2, and 1, 4. What does this mean? That means if the game ends here, player 1 gets 0, player 2 gets 1, and so on. So can we solve this game? How would this game be played? The way to do that is we go to the last step. Look at this step. Player 2 is moving, right? What should player 2 do? Should he go C or D? If he goes C, he gets 1. If he goes D, he gets 3. So he should go D, right? What should player 2 do here? If he goes E, he gets 2. If he goes F, he gets 4. So he should go this way. Let me just make this 0.5. Is that okay? So you know what player 2 is going to do here, right? Then given that, you know what you have to do here. Why? Because if you go this way, you know that player 2 is going to go this way, and you get 0.5. Is that clear? If you go this way, you know that player 2 is going to go this way, and you'll get 1. Are you guys, is that clear? So you'll go this way. Is that okay? Yes? So all we have to do is go to the last step of the game, right? And see what the players are doing at these steps. Then we have to go to the step before and see what the players are going to do with that step. And then we have to go to step before and so on. So that method is the backward induction. Is that okay? Yes? So what about the pirate problem, the one that he just talked about? So think about the last step of the pirate problem. What is the last step? The last step is everybody has been thrown off the boat, only 2 people left. So there are only 2 people left, and suppose you are the older of the 2 people. What should you suggest as a split? Yes?
50 nothing.
50 nothing. That's simply a good split. So I said, I'm going to keep 50, I'll give you nothing. Let's vote. Yes? So of course, you will vote no, I'll vote yes. But remember, all I need is half the votes. Half the surviving votes. Is that okay? So the last, so with 2 people, this will be the outcome. There's nothing you can do about it if you're the youngest pirate. Yes? So now suppose there are 3 people. What should we do? Suppose there are now 3 guys. And I'm the oldest guy. What should I propose? I know that if my proposal gets rejected, this would be the outcome, right? So I give this guy 1. I give this guy nothing, and I keep 49 for myself. So what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting, so there are 3 of us left. I'm picking up the youngest guy. I'm saying, you get 1, I get 49. I'll give the middle guy nothing. Let's go for a vote. So I, of course, vote yes, right? You, the middle guy, of course, is going to vote no because he's got nothing. Think of this guy. This guy is the guy, right? If he votes yes, he gets 1, right? If he votes no, what happens? I get kicked out. We go here, and he gets 0. So you agree to what I'm suggesting. Is that okay? So if there are 3 people left, it will be 49, 0, 1. That will be the choice. Is that clear, guys? If there are 4 people left, what should I do? I should give this guy nothing, give this guy 1, give this guy nothing, and keep 49 for myself. Yes? Is that okay? Why? Again, so these 2 guys, forget about these 2 guys, they're going to vote no. This guy is the important guy, whether he's going to vote yes or no. Yes? If he votes no, remember, then the game goes here, and he gets 0 here. Why does he get 0 here? Because the game goes here, this guy gets 0. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Yes. So this is the way you can fold the game back, right? And as he said, with 5 people, you're going to get 48 for yourself and give 1 to the other people. Yes, so that is what sequential games are. And this, of course, was discovered. This idea was by this guy Zellerton, So he and Nash, the Russell Crowe guy, they won the Nobel Prize in the same year. Apparently, this might not be true, so don't quote me outside this class, but apparently Nash tried to kill Zelitin in his undergraduate days. They were roommates. And Nash actually put some sort of electric bulb in his bag, or something that's really dramatic. He thought Zelitin was a Russian spy. Anyway, so that was. Anyway, so this was why. And so there's this famous theorem called Zermelo's theorem, which says that every sequential game can be solved this way. And you can see why, right? You go to the end and then you fold the game back. That's the idea. So, for example, the game of chess is solvable, right? The problem of solving a game of chess, of course. So there is an optimum way to play chess. Is it by Zermelo's theorem? Is that okay? All we have to do is draw this gigantic game tree, right, with millions and millions of arms, right, and go to the last step and solve all these last steps out. Is that okay? But theoretically, it is possible to do it. Yes. Let's think of how complicated the game tree gets. If you think about the tic-tac-toe game, if I want to draw the tree of the tic-tac-toe game, how would that happen? So here's the tic-tac-toe game, right? No, that's too many. So if you are starting the game, you have 9 possible moves, right? You have 9 possible strategies. Is that okay? And from each of these 9 strategies, the second guy has 8 possible strategies, right? And so on. So the game tree looks really complicated even for a tic-tac-toe. Just imagine what it's going to look like for chess. Is that okay? But it could be solved. That's the idea, that you can actually solve this game using it. Okay. So now let's think about, but as you saw, the problem that von Neumann faced is to thinking about what I should do depends on what he thinks I should do and so on. That is absent for sequential games, right? We just go to the last step and we know what people are going to do in the last step. They're going to choose the ones that's better for them, right? And then we can pull the game back. Yes, that's the idea. A lot of games are not simultaneous, not sequential, but simultaneous. In other words, when I'm choosing my action, I have no idea what you have done. Right? And when you are choosing the action, the history is not observable to you. And that's what a simultaneous move is. So there are no trees, right, in simultaneous move games because we don't even know where to start because there is no starting point, right? We both move at the same time. Is that okay? It's like playing rock, paper, scissors, right? Rock, paper, scissors is not sequential because if it was sequential, it would be the stupidest game. So the idea of the rock, paper, scissors is you have to have it simultaneously, right? Otherwise the point of the game is completely lost. So that was the simultaneous. So that's the next set of theories. For example, most of us, of course, have heard of. So the way we represent this simultaneous move game is through matrix things. So the most famous. Let me give you 2 famous games. This is the most famous game of all. I'll just talk about it briefly because all of us have heard of it, I'm sure, at some point. And then there is this game called the game of chicken. So let's just first talk about the prisoner's dilemma game. So this is so very common. I don't know whether you guys are crime show fans, but I used to watch a lot of Law and Order when we were growing up. Law and Order episodes have been running forever. But anyway, so most of this, 50% of the Law and Order episodes is that there are 2 guys who've committed a crime. They're taken to 2 different rooms. Cops in the room 1 is telling the guys that, the room 2 guy is just blabbering and saying everything bad about you. You are the guy who did it. And then they go to room number 2 and say room number 1 guy is just an absolute idiot. And this is how they try to break them down. That's a perfectly legal strategy, right? Cops can lie to prisoners. And it works almost always. And the reason it almost always works is because of this game called Prisoner's Dilemma, and I'll show you exactly what it means. So let's say you and I have committed a crime together. So let's say we both have robbed a bank. And now both got arrested. The cops have some sort of a traffic ticket on us or something, but they can't really prove that we have robbed a bank together. So I have two options. I can either cooperate with you. In other words, I would not tell the cops that we robbed a bank. That we'll say that we were shooting pool or something. Or I can defect. And I can tell the cops that, yes, we robbed the bank, but that guy was the main man. He was the planner. I was just an innocent bystander. So I've got two choices, right? Either I cooperate with you, not with the cops. Remember, cooperation doesn't mean with the cops here. So cooperate or defect. So cooperating with you means that I'm not going to tell the cops anything. And defecting means I'm ratting you out. You've got two choices too, sitting at your jail cell. You've got cooperate and you've got defect. Is that okay? And I have to choose my strategy not knowing what you have done. And you have to choose your strategy not knowing what I have done. So let's say we both cooperate. Then we both go to jail for a year. We have some outstanding parking tickets or something. So none of us say anything bad about each other, but we go to jail for some sort of unrelated charge. Yes? If we both defect, that means I'm saying that you are the culprit and you are saying that I'm the culprit. So the cops have too much evidence in some way, right? So we both go to jail for, let's say, 3 years each. Yes? And if I cooperate, that means I'm not ratting you out, right? And you defect, that means you are saying that I'm the guy who did it. Then you go free and I go to jail for 7 years. Is that okay? Is that clear? And similarly the other way around. So the question is, when we're sitting at home, sitting in our own jail cell and thinking about what to do, the question is, what should we do? So here comes the problem, right? Now we have to decide on what to do depending on what I think you're going to do, right? And what you're going to do depends on what you think I'm going to do, and so on and so on. So we have to have a lot of coffee and decide what we should do. Yes? So let's say you are sitting in your jail cell and you're thinking about what to do with me. So you're thinking, okay, let's say Professor Banerjee decides to cooperate. Decides to not rat me out. We have robbed the bank, but he decided not to rat. So what should I do? If I cooperate with him, then I go to jail for a year, right? If I defect, I can go home tomorrow. So if you cooperate, my strategy is to defect. Is that okay? Yes? If you defect, if I defected, if I said bad things about you, now you've got two choices. If you cooperate, you're going to jail for 7 years. And if you defect, you're going to jail for 3 years. Is that okay? So you're going to defect. Is that clear? So regardless of whether I cooperate or whether I defect, you're going to defect. But that's the best thing you can do. Is that okay? Is that clear? So you're thinking, and similar, I'm as smart as you are, hopefully. Right? So since you have decided to defect always, I'm thinking the same thing. So I'm going to defect also, right? So both of us will rat each other out, and that's exactly what happens. And we both go to jail for 3 years. Is that clear? However, so we are too smart for our own good. You see what I'm saying? Because if you're both dumb, then there's this beautiful payoff waiting for us, right? Yes? So, but we think we are smart, and we are equally smart, so we both go to jail for a longer time. So suppose I call you up in the middle of the night, suppose somebody slips us with a cell phone, and I call you up in the middle of the night and say, listen, I have drawn this game, Matrix game in my jail cell. So we both know that we are going to defect tomorrow, right? And we both will go to jail for 3 years. Why don't we decide, why don't we just cooperate and go to jail for a year? Let's do that. Why don't you cooperate? And my jail partner would say, sure thing, why don't you cooperate? Because the moment I decide to cooperate, he'll just defect and get nothing. Right? He'll go to it. Is that okay? So regardless of how much we talk to one another, we both defect. Is that okay? So that's the prisoner's dilemma. So this is what is called, so this solution is what is called a Nash equilibrium, where we are both doing the best given what the other guy is doing. Is that clear? And what the point is that the Nash equilibrium might not be optimum for both parties. So let's take one more example. So let's take the game of chicken. So think about a scenario, let's say it's a Friday night, and people are drinking a lot. Let's say freshmen, just to make it. I hope there's no freshmen here. So, and then both people get in their respective cars. Two people are drinking. They get in their respective cars, and they go on the same lane. One of them drives towards the other drives towards each other. They're playing this game of macho chicken. So the idea is that I'm going to stay on my lane longer than you. So I'm going to stay and gun my car. You're going to gun your car. Whoever swerves loses. Is that clear? So think about the game in the following sense again. So I have two strategies. I can stay. That means I'm going to stick to my road wherever I am, or I can swerve. Yes. I can either stick to it or I can swerve. Yes. You have the same strategy. You can either stay or you can swerve. Is that okay? The question is, so let's say, what are the payoffs? Suppose we both stay. That means I decide to stay and you decide to stay, then we just hit each other and we both die. And let's say dying is -10. So you both sort of run into each other and die. So let's say I stay and you have swerved. That means I won macho points and you are, you have lost. So then let's say I get 5, yes, and you get nothing. Is that clear? So winning is 5, losing is nothing. Similar 0-5. Symmetric, right? 0-5. And let's say swerve, that means none of us have won. We both have lost. But at least we're alive. This is a good thing, right? So it's a draw, but we're alive. Yes? So that's the payoff. Are you guys all with me here? Okay. So now the question is, what is the equilibrium in this game? In other words, what are the strategies one should choose so that none of us would regret a choice given what the other guy has done? Is that clear? That's what a Nash equilibrium is that I have suggested a pair of strategies such that I don't regret my choice given what you have done, and you don't regret your choice given what I have done. Yes? Once we observe what each other has done. Of course, in this case, regret means probably death or something. But I mean, you understand this, right? So let's take this strategy. Stay. I stay, you stay. Is that a Nash equilibrium? Can that be an equilibrium? If you decide, am I doing the best given what you are doing? And the answer is no. Given that you are staying, I should not stay. So we are not doing the best given each other. So this is not an equilibrium. Is that clear? Is this an equilibrium? Swerve. Is that an equilibrium? The answer is no, right? Given that you are swerving, I'm not doing the best by swerving. I should stay. Right? Is that okay? How about I stay and you swerve? Is that an equilibrium? Let's say I stay and you swerve. Is that so? Am I doing the best given what you are doing? You are swerving. So am I doing the best by staying? The answer is yes, right? Given that I'm staying, are you doing the best by swerving? Yes. So stay, swerve is an equilibrium. Is that okay? So this is an equilibrium, and so is this. We don't know which one of them would be chosen. That's the life and death problem here, right? But the problem is there are two equilibrium here where one person stays and the other person swerves. Is that okay? And that's what a natural equilibrium is. So whenever I look at this game, of course it's a funny, weird game to talk about, but if I was playing this game, for example, with you, and this is the only game we are playing all our lives, what I would have done is, let me suggest what I would have done. I would have yanked my steering wheel out of my car, put it outside my window, wave it, and then throw it outside the window. Is that true? So I'll take the steering wheel out of my car, wave it over my head, and throw it out the window so that you can see that I've done it. Why? Because once I do that, then what happens? That means I don't have this option anymore. Is that okay? So what I'm showing you by throwing the thing out of my window is that, even if I'm chickening out in the end, I have no choice. I have to stay. Yes? And then you're a rational person. given that I don't have this strategy, what should you do? You know that I'm going to stay. I have another option, right? So you have to swerve. Is that okay? So I can guarantee this outcome by yanking my steering wheel. Is that okay? So this is the idea, but if you, of course this is a sort of a tongue-in-cheek example, but the idea is, if you are, one of the ways, let's go back to the Greek days, and there's this famous article by Xerxes about military strategy, is that when you're attacking, suppose some other army, what Xerxes suggested is that you burn the bridges behind you. Yes? So that you cannot retreat even if you want to. Do you see? So the other side would think that these guys are completely insane, so let me retreat. That was his suggestion for a strategy. Is that okay? So I mean, this same concept can be used in military strategies, for example, where let's say the Russians and Americans have nuclear bombs pointed at one another, and a nuclear bomb accidentally goes from Washington and hits Moscow. While the nuclear bomb is actually going from Washington to Moscow, the American president calls up the Russian president and says, listen, there has been a tremendous mistake. We just found that the nuclear missile is going towards Moscow. That was a mistake. Let bygones be bygones. And at this stage, the optimal thing for the Russian government to do is to say, yes, if I send another nuclear missile to Washington, then Washington will get destroyed, and then they're going to send another. So it is actually better to sort of still let bygones be bygones, right? But to avoid this possibility of this phone call, what one does is make it automatic. So if I see a nuclear bomb coming from this side, an automatic nuclear bomb is going to go from the other side. So just precluding this conversation. Do you guys see? So the point that I want to mention here is that sometimes having less options, is better. Is that okay? Unlike standard decision theory that we have, the more options, the better off you are. We are maximizing for a larger set, right? But here, even if we sort of reduce our action sets, we can be better off. Is that okay? That's one of the differences between this. So I don't know. So let me just give you a couple of more extensions of this idea, and then we'll stop. It can be used, as I said, in evolutionary biology, for example. So there's this famous example of toads. There's a lot of similarity between undergraduate students and this example. I'll tell you why. So I don't know whether you guys have followed the life of toads. I'm not sure why you should do that. But the idea is that when the toads are looking for mates, they have two choices. They can either fight. So let's say two male toads are fighting for a female toad. So they run into each other. The two male toads can decide either to fight with each other. Whoever wins gets the girl. Or if I see that my opponent is a gigantic toad, I might just run away and sort of bide my time for another female toad to come up later. Right? So these are my two choices. So I can either fight with my opponent or decide to slink away and wait for my next chance. Whether I'm going to slink away depends on what I think my opponent's size is. If he beats me up, then possibly it's not a good idea to fight with him, right? That's the idea. And all of these choices have to be made in the dead of night when they cannot see each other, right? So whether or not my opponent is a gigantic toad or a small toad, I have no clue because I have to guess what they are in the middle of the night. And the way they guess it is by listening to their croaks. So if a toad has a deep croak, that means he's a big guy. Right? And so if I hear a really deep croak, then I'm going to say, possibly it's not a good idea. I'm going to wait for some guy who has a, soprano. So that's why at night you hear tremendous amount of croaking by toads, because everybody's trying to show each other exactly where they lie in the gigantic spectrum. Is that okay? So that they have to avoid most fights. So my question that I want you guys to think about is, if I am a tiny toad, why should I croak? Why not keep quiet and sort of make the other guy guess that I might be interested? If I'm the biggest toad of all, I don't need to croak, right? And if you want to fight with me, fine, and it will beat you up, right? But the smaller toads still croak. And I always found that weird, because why would one want to do that? Why don't you just keep quiet? And hopefully the other guy in the mix mistake me for a big guy and run away, right? And then I can sort of fake it. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? But even the small guys, small frogs croak. So the question is why? First of all, what has this got to do with game theory? The way to think about it is, think of these strategies of croaking and not croaking as strategies. Of course, the frog is not sitting with a calculator and thinking what to do. But a strategy that is going to win is the evolutionary stable strategy. Is that okay? Do you guys see what I'm saying? So the winning and losing is how many kids you're going to have in the future. That's what winning is in evolution, in biology, right? So the question is, why should you croak? That's the first question. This idea of croaking has been extended to education. And there's this famous paper by Spence, who won the Nobel Prize in economics 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something. And his idea was the education itself might not have any intrinsic value for the company that you're going to work for eventually. But it's just a signal of your ability. Right? So essentially, the things that you're learning in, please don't quote me outside this class, things that you're learning in this university might be worthless. But the fact that you're getting a degree, with a good degree, tells the employers that even though whatever the professors taught you makes no difference as to what you're going to do in your life, but the fact that that's a signal of your ability. Is that okay? If I'm a complete idiot, I would find it much more difficult to replicate your croak than you would be. Do you see what I'm saying? So by your degree is like the croak of a fat toad. Yes? So by putting your degree, you're showing how good you are, and that would give you, better payoffs. If it's a biology, more kids. Is the idea clear? So even if education does not have any intrinsic value, it's a great signaling ability. Is that maybe if you guys want any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them. There are plenty of other extensions, of course, as you might imagine. Sometimes you don't know what kind of player you're playing a game with, right? So when I'm dealing with, so let's say, a professor and student, they don't quite play a game, right? But so suppose think of the employer-employee. In the case that there's a possibility that I'm a terrible worker or I'm a hard worker. When the employee hires me, his or her payoff, employer hires me, his or her payoff depends on whether I'm a good worker or a bad worker, right? So, but there's no way, but if you ask me, are you a good worker or a bad worker, then of course I'm going to say I'm a great worker, right? So somehow they have to figure out, think of insurance. If you're going to buy insurance, let's say I want to buy fire insurance for my house, the insurance company's profits are going to depend on how well behaved I am, right? And my premiums will be low given what the insurance companies think about me. Is that clear? So if the insurance company asks for fire insurance and asks me whether I'm a smoker or not, that's what I'm going to say. I've never even seen a cigarette in my life. Right? They have no way to verify it. So the question is, what kind of contract should these two people set? That's also part of game theory. So now the last question that we should think about before we start is just if you go back and try to apply that von Neumann poker game that we started in the beginning, what would be the strategy? Maybe you guys can figure that out, or we can just do it for 2 minutes here, whatever you want. And tell me if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
Well, I just have a question, going back to that pirate example.
Yes.
We worked backwards and concluded that offering 48 for yourself is the optimal solution. And that's assuming you're playing against super rational people,
That's right.
which is if they're pirates,
That's right.
that would never actually work out. So how is that the optimal solution?
That's true. I mean, there is. This is a legitimate problem. So let me give you an example which is even more unrealistic. So think about suppose there are 2 players. Suppose you're player 1 and I'm player 2. I've got 2 strategies. I can either stop the game or I can continue the game. If I stop the game, I get 1, you get nothing, right? Then it's your turn. You can either stop the game or you can continue the game. Is that okay? If you stop the game, then I get 0 and you get 2, and so on and so on, right? So again, let's say 1 moves 3 and 1. 2 moves, 2 and 4. 1 moves, 5 and 3. And let's end it in here, 4 and 6. Okay. So I could have gone on forever, right? So this is what's called a centipede game. So it seems like if you play the game for a while, there are nice payoffs waiting for us here, right? For both of us. So what would this game be? How would this game be played? So let's go to the last step. So here's player 1. What should player 1 do? If he continues, he gets 4. If he stops, he gets 5, right? So he stop. Is that okay? Think of player 2 here. What would he do? If he continues, he knows that player 1 is going to stop, so he'll get 3. If he stops, he'll get 4, so he'll stop. Is that okay? If player 1, if he continues, he gets 2. If he stops, he gets 3, so he'll stop. So he'll stop. So the outcome will be this one. So again, if you are too smart, then you're screwed, right? then you'll land up with this one. Whereas there's sweet payoffs waiting for us at the end here. Yes. See, so the rationality is sometimes a very strong assumption. Right?
What does that even tell us then?
So it tells us, no, that's it. That's important. So suppose you find yourself here. Suppose it's your turn and you are moving from here. What it tells you right away, that the fact that you are here means 2 things. It means that 1 cannot be a rational individual. And neither are you. Yes. So the fact that you have seen yourself here should tell you a lot of things, right? That maybe you should not stop. Maybe you should continue and hope for the coincidence of your
No, like say you're person 2 and you are rational, but like you get to your turn basically. So then you know that 1 isn't rational.
Absolutely. So then you can sort of have the problem of irrationality is that 1 can be rational in only a couple of ways, but you can be irrational in so many ways. So for example, if you find yourself here, you can say, okay, maybe the guy just mishit the button. That's one possibility. Or you can assume that let's assume the guy is crazy with probability 1/3 and rational with probability. And based on that assumption,
So like to extend that, have there been like design models that like take into account
yes,
different
actually,
irrationalities?
so they have actually done experiments which are really surprising. For example, they give the guy $10, and then they negotiate. They say, you and I will split $10, and I offer you something. If you say no, then the $10 disappears, right? And so what is the best strategy? The best strategy here, it seems like I offer you a penny, right? And I keep $9.99 for myself. You should agree, right? Because if you don't agree, then we all both get nothing. We'd rather have a penny than nothing, right? That was the idea. But they actually tried this experiment in real life, but so always 60-40. Even though the optimal thing to offer you is a penny, human beings always offer like 60%, 40% for you, 60% for me, and so on. So it's not quite rationality. Bounded rationality is a new and upcoming subject in game theory where we assume people are not quite as rational as formalized.
So we assume there's like a limit there.
Yes, that's right. That we can only compute up to n steps, and that's where you start. Yes. Just let me end on a quick note about the second price auction, the thing that I just said. One of the beauties of the second price auction is that truth telling. So you remember when you write down your bid, of course you don't want to write down exactly how much you value the painting at, right? Because you want to make some money off it. Is that okay? What the second price auction does is that writing down your actual valuation of how much you value the painting is the best you can do. So there's no reason for you to lie in the second price auction. Is that okay? So everybody, if they're playing the game rationally in a second price auction, should just reveal exactly how much they like the painting in their single bid. It's a dominant strategy. It's the best you can do, regardless of what the other guys are doing. Telling the truth is the best thing for yourself. Not because you're a moral person, because that's how you're going to make the most amount of money. Is that okay? And this is the reason why telecom contracts nowadays use the second price auction methods to get a better idea of what the valuations of the companies are. And the guy who discovered this second price auction, Vickrey, you want to know what price was.
But if everyone does that, won't like you end up paying more? If everyone like bids on the value of the painting?
Not quite. So let's say your value is 60 and my value is 40, right? Of course, you have no idea what my value is, right? And you have no idea, I have no idea what your value is. So our values are private. So the question is, what should you bid? Should you bid? So remember, if you bid 80, right? You can bid $1 million, right? The higher you bid, the problem is, the good side is that the probability of winning is higher, right? The downside is that the amount of money you have to pay is higher also. Right? Is that okay?
Oh, okay.
So that part of the trade-off is gone because of that. You don't have to pay your bid. All right, guys. If you have any questions, please come by and we can talk about it.
Just 1 second, guys.